I'm going to trace out a diagram with leaves and create a file for the CO2 laser. I'm using Logic Trace, and the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to define the four corners of the paper diagram. You can see me touching the four corners. The next thing we're going to do in Logic Trace is we're going to trace out the perimeter of the diagram. And here I'll select Arc first, and then I'll go into Tracing for the irregular parts. And when I select Stop, that will close up that vector. Also, you'll notice here I use a red pencil to mark off where I start, and that keeps track of also what's been traced. So I'm just going to trace all along the perimeter of the diagram. Now I've selected Trace again, and I'm tracing out some of the internal parts on the right-hand side of the diagram. When I trace a diagram, I try and use all four commands to make it quicker for tracing. But if there's anything irregular, I pretty well stick to the Trace command. You can see here now that all the rest of my tracing is going to be all the internal parts. I'm just going to carry on and trace out all the internal parts, mark off what I've done with that red pencil. It doesn't take that long. It's fairly quick. This is probably a good spot to talk about saving your work. I save my work frequently. When you save your work, the program saves another copy. I call that copy the work copy. And the beauty of this work copy is that if you want to take a break or pick up tracing the next day, all you do is load that work copy in and carry on tracing right from where you left off. The other thing to mention is the flexibility of the program. There are options and setup buttons on the program, and you can configure parts of the program to suit yourself. Like, for instance, I have the line width at 0.5 and I have a black line. I like tracing with a black thread. It looks like a black thread. I find the program easy to use, and it's fast. And it has the ability to be saved in different formats, like DXF is which I'm using, PolyDXF, SVG, or PDF. The program has a unique feature, and that's the ability of the program to extend the control window, that's the left-hand side of the program, to another device, like a cell phone or an iPad. What's great about this feature is that you could have that cell phone or iPad located close to where you're tracing and make your selections very quickly. As you can see in that diagram, you can see all those red marks. It's a really good way of keeping track of what's been traced. Also, what my plan here is to cut out this leaves with the circle background, cut that out of a hardboard, an 1/8 inch material. And then the pieces that come out of the cut, I'm going to color them a different color. So I'm going to have the frame all black, and I'm going to have the leaf interior all green. And then I'm going to mount all of this on a white substrate. So it's going to be about 24 inches by 24 inches square. I think it's going to give it like a 3D look. I think it's going to look pretty cool. It's a fairly detailed diagram to trace out, but really, it wasn't that much work. As long as you keep track of what you've traced, mark it off, and do your selections, your trace command, it goes by very quickly. Initially, I had traced out that outer frame when I started, but I didn't use the frame. Instead, I switched just to a white background, to a white substrate. Again, I always talk about saving your work. I save my work frequently. In fact, if I make a mistake when I'm doing my tracing, it's easier for me just to load in my previous file and continue on tracing. The outer frame was easily traced. I just used the line command and the curve fit around those corners. Initially, I thought I would cut this out of a white material. Getting close here now to finishing up with the tracing, so I'll save my file, my final DXF file, and I'm going to run that file through the CO2 laser program, running it through the simulator first to see how much time it's going to take. It looks like it's going to take about 23 minutes. The next step now is to load the panel onto the laser bed, so I'm using a hardboard panel. Laser set up at about 32% power at about 0.477 speed. And I'm also using shop air pressure about 28 psi. The cut's coming along quite smooth. What I check here is I make sure that the odd piece lifts up a bit, and that tells me that the laser settings are correct. This 1/8" hardboard is fantastic for cutting. It's very smooth, very detailed cut. Getting finished up here with the cutting, so the next step will be to pull off that frame and pull off the parts separately. Here I've given the frame 2 coats of black spray, and I'm starting to work on the green parts. I've mounted all the parts on a white substrate. It looks good. It's about 24 inches by 24 inches. I like it.